You know that dynamic in a relationship, right? Where one person seems totally cool and unbothered, while the other feels like they're doing all the emotional heavy lifting? But is that calm exterior really a sign of strength? Or is it hiding something way more complicated?
And that's really the core question, isn't it? It's so easy to look at someone who never seems to get upset and think, wow, they're the rational one. But what if that quiet isn't actually peace? What if it's more like a pressure cooker with the lid screwed on tight?
So when we think about poor emotional regulation, our minds almost always jump straight to the explosive partner, the one who's hyper-expressive. But that's only seeing half the picture. The other side of that coin is the hypo-expressive partner. They're the one who seems so unbothered, but in reality, they're just bottling everything up. And trust me, that can be just as damaging.
Okay, so this unbothered partner, well, there's actually a name for this pattern. Let's really dig in and define what it means to be an emotional withholder.
Here's the basic idea. An emotional withholder feels negative things, just like everybody else. But instead of talking it through or showing how they feel, their gut reaction is to pull back, to withdraw. And on the surface, their goal is simple: avoid a fight and keep the peace.
So what's the strategy behind this silence? Well, it's not that they don't have feelings. They absolutely do. They are just so allergic to conflict that they'd rather sit with their own discomfort than risk a confrontation. So they put on this mask of being disengaged, all while those unresolved feelings just keep piling up inside.
And you can probably see the toxic dynamic this creates, right? The withholding partner looks cool as a cucumber. So the partner who is actually expressing frustration, the one trying to solve the problem, ends up looking like they're overly emotional or, unstable by comparison.
This whole situation leads to a really powerful metaphor for what's happening underneath that calm surface. We call it the volcano effect. This quote just nails it. Don't mistake quiet for peace. Seriously, just because a volcano isn't erupting right now doesn't mean there isn't molten lava churning around deep inside. It's the exact same thing with withheld emotions. That quiet you're experiencing, it is very often this silence before the storm. So how does the eruption even happen? It's actually a pretty clear path. It all starts with avoiding conflict. Then the emotions get withheld. They get stored away instead of being processed. But they don't just disappear. The pressure just builds and builds and builds, until one day some tiny, insignificant thing triggers a massive eruption, and all those old feelings come out at once. And for the partner on the receiving end, this is incredibly damaging. You spend weeks, maybe months, feeling completely dismissed and ignored. Then suddenly, you're being terrorized by this huge emotional explosion. That swing feels so unfair, and it comes completely out of the blue. It's like emotional whiplash. Okay. So if any of this is sounding a little too familiar, whether it's you or your partner, what can you actually do about it? Let's walk through a simple framework of 3 really critical questions to ask yourself. First up, question number 1. You've got to be brutally honest here. When you withdraw and you avoid that difficult conversation, are you actually creating peace? Or are you just kicking the can down the road, basically guaranteeing a much bigger, much uglier explosion later on? Just remember that volcano. That quiet on the surface is not real peace. All right, the second question. This one gets more to the root of the problem, the why behind it all. So, why are you so afraid to express yourself in the first place? A lot of times, this fear comes from our past. It's a learned belief that if you show negative feelings, something bad will happen. Maybe it's because it never felt safe to be vulnerable, either in this relationship or even going all the way back to your childhood. Now, this is such a crucial point. It's not always just about what the other person is doing. You have to look in the mirror. You have to examine your own role. If your entire history of expressing big emotions has been those volcanic eruptions we talked about, well, it kind of makes sense that your partner has become defensive, right? You have to take some responsibility for your part in creating that dynamic. And that leads us perfectly into the final and maybe the most practical question of all. This one is all about skill. For a lot of emotional withholders, the problem isn't just fear, it's a lack of know-how. They genuinely struggle with emotional intelligence. First, just figuring out what they're feeling, and second, having the right words to talk about it calmly and accurately. The good news is, this is a skill you can absolutely build. You can work on just being more aware, more mindful of your feelings as they pop up. You can actively work to expand your emotional vocabulary. And here's a great tip. Start by practicing with positive emotions. It's way lower stakes, and it helps you build that muscle for the harder conversations down the line.
So ultimately, the goal here is to move from a relationship that's defined by all this tense quiet to one that's defined by genuine peace. And that peace is always built on a foundation of emotional safety for both people.
So let's be crystal clear on the difference. Quiet is just the suppression of feelings, which pretty much always leads to an inevitable explosion. Peace, on the other hand, is what you get from healthy expression. That's what leads to real resolution and a much stronger connection. They are not the same thing, not even close.
So here's the key takeaway. You have to let the pressure out a little bit at a time. Talk about your feelings as they come up, one by one, instead of letting everything build up until the dam bursts and it all comes out in one big emotional flood. And that's really the question we want to leave you with. Take a second to really think about your own relationships. Are they built on the solid ground of true expressive peace, or are you just standing on the shaky ground of a quiet volcano waiting for it to erupt?